Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today is Roderick Jefferson, and I am so happy to have
I'm
you on my show
absolutely honored
today.
and can't
Thanks for
wait
joining
to
us.
jump in with you.
All right, well, let's get right into it then and start with the first question I always like to ask my guests, which is, what were the values and beliefs
Um,
that you were raised with that contributed to you becoming who
they are
you have
four
become in
F's. They are
adulthood?
faith, family, friends, and fun. And those have not shifted since I was a little kid.
Okay. And
Well, well,
tell
it
me
was
more about
instilled by
how
my
those were
mom,
instilled in you.
and you'll probably hear me quote her quite a few times throughout this. So buckle in and prepare. This is a woman that, and I always believed and said that if my mom didn't like someone, they're just not liked. You must have to do some really crazy stuff. My mom's one of those people that can find the best in anyone, and her faith was always foundational of everything. And then I was always taught that no matter what happens inside of your family, you're stuck with them. You may not like them, but you still are stuck with having
Mm.
them. So you've got to work through things and figure out how to work things out. And then the friendship thing, I've always been a people person. So it's always been about having a very small, tight network of folks. But these are people that I trust intrinsically and will share everything under the sun, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And I expect the same thing back from them. And just as I've grown throughout life, if I can't have fun with something with it, then as you say, your four letter word, forget it.
Okay. All right. I feel like you have that same ability of making
Thank you for
people
that.
feel comfortable
I try to.
wherever you go.
My goal has always been as a person, and then secondarily as an executive and a leader, that I've always believed that I'm successful, one, by making more people successful. The second piece is I've never believed that I'm important because I wrap my arms around things. I think we're all extremely important because we open up and allow to share and be your authentic self, right? And the last piece is if I can help someone's journey be
Mm.
just a little bit better, maybe not easier, but a little better, and I can give one person a smile, even if it's the person that is serving me at a restaurant and the people that are invisible, the mail carriers, the folks that are doing the garbage cans. If I can give those folks a smile, that may be the only smile that someone gives them all day or shows them that they're not invisible.
Yes, that's so important. And, we talk about that a lot in my first business and in the business I run now about that whole showing
Yes.
people that they
Well,
have
that's not
value.
just important, it's imperative these days. There has never been a
Yeah.
time, I think, in the history of the world where empathy and humanity and truly connecting with people, and I'm not talking about getting connections on social media, because one, I think social media has made all of us less sociable. But I believe that making true connections, I can put my fingers on probably 15 people from high school that I'm still connected with. And that was a long time ago. And so to still be connected with those folks and have them in your inner circle and to have been through the ups, downs, the ins, the outs, the divorces, the wins, the babies, the deaths, all those things speak volume to how important people are.
You and I are on the same page there, and I have the connections with some of my friends since we were babies in a crib
Important.
and through school and through university and everything. Yeah. And that's not everybody has the ability to maintain those connections. I think a lot of people want to, but they need somebody like you or me
Oh, I
to
agree.
be
There
that
has to be
catalyst,
one person.
right? I
You're
think it's
right.
an
There has to be
innate,
one
something
person that
innate. Yeah.
constantly kind of herds the fleas, if you will, to get everybody back together and on the same page. And I've always believed that we should get together at times other than funerals, because after every funeral, what do we all say? You know what? Let's not be the next time we get together at the next funeral. And then what do you know? We're at another funeral together. So I try and reach out and go, it's not a
Yeah.
funeral. but we should probably get together before there's another funeral so that we can talk about not getting together only at a funeral.
Yeah, yeah. Let's bring the conversation back, since the show is
Mm-hmm.
called Fine is a Four-Letter Word, to the first experience you had. So you said in the intro part that one of your key beliefs
Mm-hmm.
and values is fun. So I have to ask you, no, I want you to tell the story first, and then I'm going to ask you the question. Um, the first time everything was fine in your life, but it really wasn't fine. That story of in
In
2000.
2000, where I thought everything was good, and then I suddenly one day. So, in a quick story, we all check our laptops on Sunday nights, getting ready for the next week. Well, I was checking my laptop, checking my email, and I woke up face down on my laptop, and I thought, oh, something's wrong here. And I just didn't feel right. And it felt like vertigo. I was a bit off, and my balance was off. I
Yeah.
asked my wife to take me to the emergency to go get checked. Well, as I was bending over to tie my shoes, the lights went out. Literally, my brain shut off because of an enormous amount of stress and being
Mm.
overloaded, and just the amount of things that were going on professionally and personally. And fast forward, I'm taken into the hospital, and I wake up, and it's literally, so this was November 2000. I woke up in February. I had been in a coma, in a medically induced coma, for this long.
Wow.
They had me on Vicodin, Valium, Percocet, Demerol, and Elavil all concurrently because my brain began to swell. And we were just about a week away from going in to do um, a cut into my brain to relieve the swelling of my brain. And even to this day, on my right hand side of my head, right behind my ear, I've got a lump because my brain had began to squeeze and it was pushing against the inside of my cranium. And what I learned was there is no job that's worth your life. And I thought everything's fine because you know what? We all walked around with a badge of courage. Oh, I worked 60 hours or 70 hours, or I just do whatever it takes, quote unquote, to get it done. Well, this is one of those times
Mm-hmm.
where I look back on it and go, I saw the warning signs, but I didn't listen. My body told me you need to slow down. So I have come to the conclusion if
Mm-hmm.
you do not slow down, your body will find a way to shut it down. And you don't want your mind to turn off.
Every every time. Yeah. So now that brings me to the question of, were you having
Oh,
fun
I was in a
in that
great
time in
deal
your
of,
life?
of fun. I was loving it. I was flying around the world. We had done a tour, and
Okay.
we had done London, Paris, Geneva, Sao Paulo, Toronto, Beijing, Hong Kong, and Sydney, all in 18 months. And at that time, that was my idea of fun. I was going to see the world, and I was doing it on corporate jets, and we were on corporate helicopters, and it
Mm-hmm.
was amazing. But what I didn't realize was subconsciously, I was loving the travel, but I was missing out on the life of my family. And one day it just suddenly hit me, and I literally broke down into tears. I was like, I'm sitting in this beautiful palace here in Cannes, Monte Carlo, and I have nothing but pictures to show my family. My kids are growing up. I come home sparingly to, get my dry cleaning changed and catch up with my family and try and help my kids with their homework. And then before I knew it, I was gone again. So one, my wife said she didn't sign up to be a single mom. And secondly, there was an enormous amount of resentment in both of my
Mm-hmm.
kids because dad's not there for all of the activities at school. He's not there to coach them in sports. He's not there to help with the homework. And then I just thought, you know what? This is just not worth it. And so I changed companies later, and I had settled down. And then what do you know? I stepped right back into that same routine because of my position. I stepped right back in the same thing, and it just started that same problem all over again.
So you were seeing the same
Well,
kind of warning signs,
I was
or you
seeing
just,
the warning signs, that I was also seeing that I was overstretched, my brain and myself physically. But this time, I actually stopped it and slowed it down. and started meditation and made sure that I
Okay.
was doing date nights with my wife, and I had specific time with each of the kids that I was spending, and I was coaching them in athletics again and going to their activities. But I wasn't always present is the problem. I was there physically, but hey, dad, can you
Mm.
get off your phone? Hey, dad, I know you've got to take these calls. Hey, dad, can you stay in for the entire basketball game instead of leaving at halftime so you have to go and do work stuff? And, it's something that I don't wish that on anyone. So for those that have those small kids, my kids are older now. They're 32 and 24. I wish I could go back to that time, but you don't get a do-over in life. You don't get the restart button. And looking at this in hindsight,
Mm-hmm.
and I heard them both say these exact words, Dad, we would have wished that we had less money and a different lifestyle. We've given that up to have you here. We wanted you. It wasn't the lifestyle. We wanted you present.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was just saw something earlier today about it was an article about gratitude and how having a gratitude journal became just another thing
Yes.
on this person's checklist. And it sounds like so you were doing the things, the
Oh, I had a
meditating,
journal as
the
well.
um,
Yeah.
going to the games,
It was
but it
just, it
was
became a checkbox.
yeah, okay, all right, but it was all just a checklist, yeah, like another
Absolutely.
thing on the to-do list, and it wasn't really a feeling of it so much
Oh, it
as
was definitely a
a
task though.
task.
Even with the journal, it was, oh man, I've got to make sure it's 8 o'clock. I have to go write in my journal and I have to come up with my 3 to 4 things. And that's not really living, that's just existing. And the more you exist, the more you start to lose who you are.
Right.
And I realized that I had allowed what I do in my job to overcome and overtake who I was, which was friend, husband, father, brother, etc. Instead, I'd become that title or that ambassador of that logo or company that I was tied to at the time.
How do you advise people now who are in those in that career, ladder, on that career ladder? I mean, would you have listened if you from now came back to you 20 years
I
ago?
think I
Would
would
you have
have,
listened?
because if I would have been given examples of what was going to happen if I didn't listen, right? So here's an example. We always talk about ROI, right? The return on investment. But I've realized in wisdom from age and
Mm-hmm.
stage, that's only half the equation. There's another piece. There's something called COI now, which is the cost of an action. And that is what happens if you do nothing to change what you're doing right now? What is that going to turn into? And I didn't realize that what I was doing was essentially, I was like a wave on a rock. I was chipping away with every wave. It was destabilizing my stability of life, right? And so if they could have shown me that experience, yeah, I would have listened. And what do I would tell folks now? First and foremost, never allow what you do to overtake who you are, because it's very easy to do and it happens before you realize it, especially as you're fighting to ladder climb in your career and you're trying to advance financially, etc. The other piece is, and this was a hard one to learn, corporate America, entrepreneurship also is here to make a profit. It's not here to make friends. We are all interchangeable parts. I have been released 3 times in my career, not for performance, but because of reorgs. And you know what? Even as I was talking about earlier, the company I was in where I was flying around the world with the CEO, and we're on the corporate jet, I got riffed. I got released. And he didn't even realize I was gone, right? Until it was time for the next time. And it was time for us to fly.
Wow.
And unbeknownst to him, all of my passwords at the time were something that only meant something to me. So he didn't even know how to get into his own laptop for presenters, because I ran with his presenter laptop. And he called me on a Friday. Fortunately, I was back on payroll by Monday, and we were on a plane by Tuesday again. But, my mom used to say something, And she'd ask me all the time, do you know when your CEO is on vacation? And I said, no, I have no idea. It just kind of comes and goes. She said, yeah, but think about this. If the garbage man or the plumber doesn't come for 1 to 2 weeks, you'd notice that, wouldn't you? And I said, yeah. She goes, now think about who and what is really important in life. Don't let that job become who you are and override who you are. Just allow it to be what you do. It is something that provides from a very lovely lifestyle for my family, but it's no longer what I do or who I am even.
When did you come to this philosophy?
This was early 2000s. And then I, as we all do, Lori, I
Okay.
forgot about how tough that was. And then it happened all over again recently.
Before we get to that, I want to ask you, were you how were you incorporating this philosophy into your leadership of teams? Like, were you encouraging your
Absolutely.
people to take vacations, to do these, practice gratitude, do these
Are you
things?
saying today or throughout my career?
No, between
Oh yeah,
2000
yes.
and
The answer
yeah,
is
throughout your
absolutely.
career.
And there were times where I would go to my leaders or folks on my team and say, you know what, I can see that you're running red line. It's real hot right now for you. And I can see that you need a break. Take a couple of days off, take a long weekend, whatever it may be. And I also instituted something in that time period with my team that I called off the grid. And that was if you need to go take care of a dentist or your child has something going, a play in the middle of the day, or you need to go and one guy he was selling his home and he needed to go sign paperwork. I said, don't take time off. Allow the rest of the team communicate with us and let us know that you're going to be out. That way I can always cover. The other thing I had to do was you can't just say it, you have to model it. So I started doing those things myself as I needed to go take care of things because what's important to your
Okay.
manager or your leader is imperative to you. And they're not going to listen to what I say, they're going to do what I model for them.
Exactly. Just right. I mean, I don't want to necessarily compare team members to
It's
children,
very
but
similar.
it is similar. You can say all you want, and if you're not actually doing it, then they don't really
I
think
agree.
you think
And
it's
they're going to
okay.
follow what you do. And to your point, it's a lot like children because, and I've always believed that I'm not building a team, I'm not building an org, I'm building a family when I start building out even my professional teams, and I treat them as such. And so, showing them this thing now, one, it means something because it's actionable. Even with the folks that are now part of my leadership tree that have gone from individual contributor all the way up to VP and executive, they now take that off the grid with them to as a part of their leadership team and other things that we've shared and they've seen me do. So it's amazing, and it's more like children than you realize. And that is, there's an old adage and goes this way: um, little pictures have big eyes, and what that means is everything that they see is watching you all the time, even when you don't even realize you're being watched.
Were you supported by your superiors in this
I never shared it.
philosophy?
It was something that I used with my team. I didn't go and say, "Hey,
Okay.
I've got this off the grid thing." No, but what I did do is let them know that when my people have too much on their plate, is when I step in to kind of intervene, and I'll say, "XYZ person just cannot take on another task, and if we're going to give him or her something, then we've got to agree as leaders. What are we going to take off of their plate? Because we can't just keep piling things on."
That's not
Thank
common
you.
in corporate.
I try my damnedest not to be typical.
I mean, I've heard so many, not to be common. I've heard so many stories from people and from connections on LinkedIn, from clients wherever, about how that's not the environment in a lot of companies. It's push them as hard as you can to get the most out of them in terms of productivity and accountability and all of that. And it's astounding to me how managers don't realize how counterproductive that is.
Again, it goes back to my adage of corporate America is here to make a profit, not friends. I'll say they look out for people. Do they care about people? That's debatable. And we all talk about culture, culture, culture. To me, my definition of culture is what happens when no one is watching. That's really culture. It's not what you put on your website. It's not what you put on your marketing slicks and fluff. It's what people really say on things like Glassdoor when they leave, because they're going to tell you really what that culture was. They may not say it there because obviously they would like to maintain their employment. But when you go and look at people that have left and they go and they give feedback on social media, oh, they're going to tell you the truth, whether it was amazing or if it's just a lot of fluff.
Yeah, the part that you said about corporate America only caring about profit, though, if you really dig into it, doing the things that you talked about and that I talk about in my program that I take to corporate, the Fuck Being Fine program, that's what enables people to be more profitable because they are in a better, I was going to say mindset, but it's not just about mindset. It's physical, mental, psychological wellness all the way through. And that's what, so when they can be more focused and more more effective, then they can be more productive and ultimately more profitable.
It
So it
is. It's
seems very
almost
short-sighted.
oxymoronic.
But
If we
that's
really thought about things, if we gave people more time to do things, you'd probably get more out of them just because they're happier in their work. But that doesn't seem to be the same today as as it was years ago. And so, what I firmly believe is, if you aren't an advocate on your own behalf, no one else is going to be, because no one has the vested interest in you, your health, or your performance, or your upward mobility as you do. So you have to advocate for yourself. When you get to a point where you're just completely burnt like toast, don't be afraid to say that. When you say, hey, I need a health day, or I need to do something different, or you need to go at lunch and go outside and take a walk and change the scenery, or go and meditate for 10, 15 minutes. Put that as a part of your calendar, because if it's not on your calendar, like most of us, it doesn't exist. So if you say, I'm going to go walk at noon every day or every other day, then you know what? Block that out, because two reasons. One, it's important and you won't do it for yourself. And second, because we work in a global world, 12 o'clock your time could be 3 o'clock somewhere else or any other time. So folks will drop a meeting in that time that's not blocked out. Block time out for yourself. And then I always do something on Fridays. I do I call my introspective moment every Friday. 4:30 on my calendar, like clockwork. I sit down, and what I do is I literally write up a list of what did I do this week that made a difference. And I don't mean just a laundry list. And it always has to have 1 to 2 personal things on it. It's not just about what did I do for the company. Now I'm at a point where I'm saying, okay, how did I impact someone? Did I make someone smile? Did I reach out to an old friend that I hadn't talked to in years, right? Was I able to listen to my kids in a problem that they had? Did I go and grab flowers for my wife? Whatever the case may be. But if we don't do that every week, it just becomes part of the background of what you're doing. It's just kind of, this is what I do, right? Instead, stop for a moment, appreciate and thank yourself for what you were able to accomplish this particular week.
recognizing your wins is becoming one of the themes of this season
Yeah,
of Fine is a four-letter word. And that's
absolutely.
exactly what you're talking
Absolutely.
about.
We don't do it enough.
Yeah, no matter what size. Right. They don't have to be
Yeah,
monumental wins. They can be
absolutely.
any size. And it's so important to recognize them. And one of the things that I've learned is that when you celebrate your wins, again, regardless of size, the more wins you
Absolutely.
get to celebrate. It's like when you are looking at the world with gratitude, you see
You
more
do,
to
and
be
it
grateful
starts to
for.
build an attitude of gratitude, right? And what I mean by that is it's like mathematics. It all compounds on top of each other. First, you learn the basic arithmetic, then it's algebra, then it's geometry, then trigonometry, then it's statistics. Well, you can't just go straight to stats. Stats are and I would say to align that to life, those are the big rocks that you actually move this week. To get to a big rock, you've got boulders, then you've got small pebbles. And each of those, even the pebble, creates the largest of ripple. So stop for a moment and don't always think that it has to be this big rock that I did. Sometimes it can just be the pebble that I dropped in water and that ripple reverberated and it created an attitude of gratitude for me and for someone around me.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing about gratitude too, is that it affects you, it affects the person you're delivering gratitude for, and it affects the person who's now
Yes,
hearing this story about
absolutely.
it.
I have a friend, Tamara Schmidt, and that's her
So,
statement.
yeah, it's
Attitude of
all the
gratitude.
way
And I
around.
learned from her that it's not just kind of a cool thing to say. It literally is contagious. Just like negativity, so is positivity. And it propagates, in both cases, it propagates
Yes.
just as fast. So why not add some? There's enough negativity in the world. Why not add something positive to start that ripple reverberating?
Now you have an exclamation point to put on this whole attitude of gratitude and feeling of taking some time, some personal time. How did you end up in the situation you ended up in this past October? Tell us about
Last
that.
probably October, I was again going through that overburdening of stress as well as go, go, go mentality. And October 28th of last year, I had a massive stroke and I didn't even realize anything was wrong. I was feeling, and I do mean fine, quote unquote, normal. Um, I was doing my job on the 27th. I'm a normal everyday guy. On October 8th, my brain shut down again. And this time it shut down in a different way. It was a massive stroke that blood clot floated up to my brain and it literally shut me down. I had a stroke while I was asleep, and 98% of people never wake up from a sleep stroke. I am part of the 2% club and proud to be there.
Yeah, that's so
Terrifying.
scary.
I went through speech therapy. I had a terrible, terrible stutter, that became stammer. And now, once again, thank God my speech pattern and articulation is back. And it was all due to, and I had no idea, but it was actually due to congestive heart failure. I didn't even know that I had a bad heart. I mean, I knew I had a bad heart, but not as bad as it was. My heart was only pumping at 23%. At 20%, you get cardiac arrest and you die. And I
Oh my
didn't know I was
gosh.
that close to death's door. Talk about something that'll change your mindset
Wow.
and your outlook.
Yeah. Yeah. But then when the doctor told you what, he said he was, because I thought this was so funny when you told me this story of after you went through that and he told you how long it was going to take to recover. Because you had
I
that
have the
recording.
recording,
I don't know
yes,
if you have it
yes.
with you
The
now, but
doctor said that it would take me 6 weeks to get back. And my response was just out of gut reaction, because that's who I am. I said, no, more like 4 weeks. And it's funny, Lori, because I listened to that thing over and over, just again that attitude of gratitude on my Fridays. And since I had that statement on the recording, I don't have that mindset anymore. If it takes 6 months, if it takes 2 years, they explained to me it would be 18 months to 2 years to get back to my full mental capacity. I'd say I'm probably about 85% now. I am incredibly blessed to be where I am. But if it takes that long,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm about the journey. I'm not about just the outcome and the end anymore. Life has shifted immensely since
Mm.
the stroke.
Yeah.
You lose parts of your body, you lose the ability to speak, you become dependent on everyone around you, even for the smallest of things like making it to the bathroom. It will change you in astronomically. And personally, I'll say this: if I didn't have faith going into this, I would certainly have a different level of it right now, because to know that I'm part of only 2% of people in the
Mm-hmm.
world that are still alive after a sleep stroke, man, I've got to believe there's a reason I'm still here, and the greater power has something in mind for me.
Yes. Yes. Have you seen any instance of what that might be? Or are you still waiting to
No, I
see
think I'm
clearly on
starting to
that?
see bits and pieces of it. It's starting to come together. Um, and I'm going to hold off on it, but the answer to you is absolutely. And I have shifted some things that I used to do before I don't do anymore. And I'm also looking at life differently. And I'm on the verge of putting together um, a a keynote speech, a TEDx talk, as well as a workshop to help others. And I call it the 2% mentality, right? Going back to my 2% club, and how that 2% mentality will either
Mm-hmm.
make you if you own it, or will break you if you allow everything and everyone around you to own the direction you're going.
Mm. I love it. Well, you have dropped so many
Thank
wisdom
you.
nuggets of wisdom here. I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to have you on the show and to talk about these important concepts and topics that you covered. Before we go, what is the song that you listen to when you need that extra boost of energy, something that hypes you
It's so
up?
funny
What's
you
your
asked that,
song?
because as a keynote speaker, we all have our walk on song, right? And
Right?
I'd certainly have mine, and it
Yep.
is "Brush Your Shoulders Off" by Jay-Z. It's just something that reminds me that I've got to get this off my shoulders so that I can share everything that I've got, the best of best, for my audience. And if I don't feel like I'm at peak performance when I touch that stage, there's no way that I can motivate them to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, speaking of which, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you to have you come and present or to continue the conversation we've had today, what's the
I
best way
always
for
say,
them to
if
do
you
that?
can't find me on social media, you're not trying to find me. And here's why. You can find me, hit me an email,
Okay.
info@roderickjefferson.com. You could find me on Instagram at Roderick underscore J underscore associates. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter at The Voice of Rod, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Roderick Jefferson.
Which
Absolutely.
is where I found you on LinkedIn. Well, thank you again so much for joining me today on Fine is a Four-Letter Word.